There's a lot of positive things about women that we're gonna just dive into right now. So starting at number 10, they're partners with men. So women are portrayed positively in the Quran as well as the Hadith, and the Quran frequently refers to women alongside men, and both are described as being friends and partners in the faith. Now in one passage in the Quran, Surah 9 verses 71, it says, "The believing men and the believing women are allies of one another. They enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong, and establish prayer and give zakah and obey Allah and His Messenger. Those Allah will have mercy upon them. Indeed, Allah is exalted in might and wise." Number 9 brings us the rights to property. So Muslim women were granted the right to own, inherit, as well as sell their own property as they saw fit. They were also allowed to reject forced marriages as well as keep their own names and identities after marriage. They could also initiate divorce and even get an education, and this goes back to the 7th century. So this is completely in contrast to the conditions affecting many women in certain parts of the world today. And the Prophet Muhammad was recorded to have said these words: "To seek knowledge is an obligation on every Muslim, male and female." Women are also described as spiritual equals. In the Quran, Surah 4 verses 1, it says, "O mankind, be mindful of your duty to your Lord, who created you from a single being, and from it created its mate, and from the two of them has scattered countless men and women throughout the earth. Fear God, in whose name you demand your rights of one another, and be mindful of your duty towards the wombs that bore you. God is ever watching over you." So one of the things that this passage highlights is that women are considered to be spiritual equals with men, as well as they have the same religious duties. Now let's talk about the role in the home for women. Islam supports the traditional view of how work is divided when it comes to women. Women assume the main responsibilities for the house, while men are more responsible for the financial support. They go out, they do the work and all of that, but there's a big difference here. In Islam, motherhood as well as homemaking, it's not considered to be less important or rewarding than having a professional career. Motherhood is one of the most important professions, as a matter of fact, and it's something that is very honorable. So yes, of course, a lot goes into raising a child. So if a woman wants to do that rather than hiring nannies and all of that, they definitely can do that, and it's something that you shouldn't even look down on. Number 6 brings us feminine individuality. Kind of alluded to this a little bit based on some of the points that I mentioned, but in Islam, femininity is very much appreciated, and Muslim women may seek a higher education if they want to, and they can also work outside of the home, or they can volunteer in various different services that are going to benefit the community, as long as their primary responsibilities are looked after. Now, any money that a Muslim woman earns is her own to spend as she sees fit, but in Islamic tradition, really, the man is responsible for maintaining the family and supporting the family financially. Of course, women can do that too, but in Islam, the weight of each is just different, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in this episode. Alright, so let's move on to number 5. Let's talk about marriage rights. So although Muslim parents traditionally play a very important role in arranging different marriages, as well as helping to find marriage partners for their children, both husband and wife must freely agree to the marriage. The Prophet Muhammad did grant the right for marriage annulments to girls who had been forced into marriages against their will. And you see, the relationship between husband and wife in Islam is really an interdependent one, and it's based on love and peace. As a matter of fact, in the Quran, it says this: "And of his signs is this, he created spouses for you from among yourselves, that you might find comfort in them, and he put between you love and mercy. Surely there are signs in that for people who reflect." And that's found in Surah 30 verses 21. Moving on now to number 4, women are described as being a grade below men. So what does this actually mean? Well, in the Quran, Surah 4 verses 24, men are described as being a grade above women, but in the matters of law, religion, and society. Husbands are instructors as well as, in a sense, supervisors of their wives. And a wife can be in charge of the home, but her husband does have final say over everything pretty much. Men are also usually held accountable for their wives' actions as well. So since men are responsible for the financial financial support of their family. They also inherit twice of what a woman would inherit because of their responsibility to their wives and to their family. So in the religion of Islam, they do try to keep everything fair between the man and the woman. Let's talk about divorcing Muslim women. Now, divorcing Muslim women who did not work outside of their home after marriage do not have a claim on the collective wealth of the couple under Islamic law, except for the amount of money or property that the man agrees to pay her before the woman signs the marriage contract. In the Quran, you'll find this passage in Surah 4 verses 12, and it says, "And for you is half of what your wives leave if they have no child. But if they have a child, for you is 1/4 of what they leave, after any bequests they may have made or debt. And for the wives is 1/4 if you leave no child, but if you leave a child, then for them is 1/8 of what you leave, after any bequests you may have made or debt. And if a man or woman leaves neither ascendants nor descendants, but has a brother or a sister, then for each one of them is a sixth. But if they are more than two, they share a third, after any bequest which was made or debt, as long as there's no detriment caused. This is an ordinance from Allah, and Allah is knowing and forbearing." Now next up, let's talk about intimacy at number 2. Women are to be 100% respected in intimate acts as well. The Prophet Muhammad had underlined the importance of foreplay as well as emotional intimacy in sexual relations, as the following hadith outlines. So the Prophet Muhammad said, "Not one of you should fall upon his wife like an animal, but let there first be a messenger between you." And what is that messenger, they asked? And the Prophet Muhammad replied, "Kisses and words." And finally, at number 1, let's talk about there being a reward in child care. Now, there's one passage that says, "A woman questioned the Prophet Muhammad, 'Men go to war and have a great reward for that. So what do women have?' He answered, 'When a woman is pregnant, she has the reward of someone who spends the whole night praying and the whole day fasting. When the contractions strike her, no one knows how much reward God gives her for having to go through this. And when she delivers her child, then for every suck it draws from her, she receives the reward for keeping a soul alive." That passage is taken from the Hadith, and in the Quran, Surah 2 verses 233, it also says this, "Mothers may breastfeed their children 2 complete years for whoever wishes to complete the nursing period. Upon the father is the mother's provision and their clothing according to what is acceptable. No person is charged with more than his capacity. No mother should be harmed through her child, and no father through his child. And upon the father's heir is a duty like that of the father. And if they both desire weaning through mutual consent from both of them and consolation, there is no blame upon either of them. And if you wish to have your children nursed by a substitute, there is no blame upon you as long as you give payment according to what is acceptable. And fear Allah and know that Allah is seeing of what you do." First off, I want to start off with the history of the veil. Scarves and veils of different colors and shapes used to be customary in countless cultures long before Islam came into being in the 7th century in the Arabian Peninsula. So to this day, head coverings play a large role in many religions, including Orthodox Judaism and Catholicism. You know, the nuns cover their heads as well. Now, since the 7th century, Islam has grown to one of the major religions in the world and has spread throughout the Middle East, Africa, Central Asia, and to many different societies around the Arabian Sea. With that said, various local veiling customs for women have been adopted over the years. Now, some critics of the Muslim veiling tradition say that women do not wear the veil by choice and that they are often forced to cover their heads and bodies. On the flip side, many daughters of Muslim immigrants in the West argue that the veil symbolizes their devotion and that veiling is their own personal choice. They say that it's really all about their religious identity and self-expression. Now let's take a look at the different types of head scarves and coverings, just so that you guys know the difference if you don't already. Let's look at the hijab. Now this is one name for a variety of similar head scarves.
These veils consist of 1 or 2 scarves and cover the head and neck only. The niqab covers the entire body, the whole head, and the face. However, an opening is left for the eyes. Although these veils are very popular across the Muslim world, they're most common in Arab states in the Persian Gulf. And finally, we look at the burqa. So the burqa is a full body veil. The entire face and body are completely covered. And there's a mesh screen over where their eyes are where you can see through. And it's most commonly worn in Afghanistan and Pakistan. So the big question is, to veil or not to veil? So the tradition of veiling has been influenced by different religious interpretations as well as by politics. Muslim religious writings are often not fully clear in answering the question of whether women covering themselves in these ways are mandatory. Now, various statements in the Quran make references to Muhammad's wives veiling, but it's debatable whether these statements refer just to his wives or to all Muslim women in general. Many Muslim women say that the hijab not only promotes modesty, but also prevents the objectification of women that happens in Western society. They say that the hijab helps force onlookers to take their focus off of their physical appearance and focus on a woman's intellect alone. And there are many others who feel that wearing the hijab has also protected them from focusing on their body weight or their appearance in comparison to other female friends that they may have. Wearing the hijab sends the message of, I'm Muslim and I have a presence here. Now, the most common misconceptions about Muslim women seem to be that they are oppressed and that their religion sees them as inferior to men. For instance, the former French president Nicolas Sarkozy referred to the burqa as a sign of subservience, a sign of lowering. And of course, many Muslim women disagree with this because they say that if there are women who are oppressed, it's because of the people and the culture around them, not specifically Islam. The first thing that I want to get into right now is really looking more into the term Islamic feminism and then distinguishing it from the term Islamism. So let's take a look. Now, the phrase Islamism, the term can refer to various forms of political and social activism advocating that public and political life should be guided by Islamic principles, as well as it can relate to movements that advocate that political and personal life should be in line with Islamic law. You may have also heard the terms political Islam or Islamic fundamentalism. Those are terms that are used interchangeably with Islamism. Now, when we look at Islamic feminism, this is not a female-centric form of Islamism, nor is it even just simply a form of feminism that is born out of Muslim culture. Rather, Islamic feminism engages Islamic theology through Islamic texts as well as traditions. And now its aim is to have full equality of men and women in the religion and other areas of life as well. And this equality also extends to non-Muslims as well. Now, the concept of Islamic feminism has grown further with more Islamic groups on the rise. Also, educated Muslim women are working to establish their role in society to have their voice heard, as well as cause significant changes in the political and social arena. Islamic feminists argue that Islam has historically been interpreted in a patriarchal and sometimes misogynistic way, that Sharia law has been misunderstood and or misrepresented, and that the spirit and the letter of the Quran have been completely distorted. Sharia, which is the Islamic religious law, is derived from the Quran, the main religious text of Islam. It also derives from the Hadith, which are the sayings and the deeds of the Prophet Muhammad and his companions, and Ijma, meaning consensus, and Qiyas, meaning reasoning by analogy. Islamic feminists challenge the patriarchal interpretation of the traditional male consensus, and they use female-centric verses of the Quran as well as sayings from the Hadith to spread equality in Islam. Now, looking at the rise rise in Islamic feminism throughout history. William Montgomery Watt, who was born 1909 to 2006, he was one of the main non-Muslim interpreters of Islam in the West, and he portrayed the Prophet Muhammad in the historical context of his time. And this context was that Muhammad was a figure who testified on behalf of female rights in all aspects of life, and this included owning property as well as education and rights in divorce, just to name a few. Now, throughout history, there have been groups and individuals that have set out to shift the accepted paradigm in Islam when it comes to female rights in relationship to male rights. Now, some notable groups in the 21st century that have risen up and have really established themselves as Islamic feminist groups, they are the Sisterhood. Now, the Sisterhood is an international platform for the voices of women who are Muslim, and this was founded in 2007 by a Norwegian filmmaker, Dia Khan, through her media and arts production company called Fuse. There's also the Sisters in Islam. Sisters in Islam's work really focuses on challenging laws and policies made in the name of Islam that discriminate against females. Now, they specifically take on issues covered under Malaysia's Islamic family and Sharia laws, such as polygamy, child marriage, the hijab and how it relates to modesty, and many others. And although Islam is a state religion of Malaysia, Malaysia remains a pluralistic democracy, which has made it very easy for women to challenge these Quranic teachings and Islamic philosophy and traditions. So they're making a lot of headways over in Malaysia. Then there's also Musawa, and this is a global movement that was formed in the year 2009, and the name actually means equality in Arabic. Musawa really advocates for feminist interpretations of Islamic writings, and they really encourage nations to really start following international human rights standards. So as you can see, there's several different groups that are making some headways in the world of Islamic feminism. They tackle similar issues and have similar focuses, but the end goal is actually the same: equality for men and women, not just in Islam, but also in the rest of the world. One woman, Fatima Sadat, who advocates the importance of feminism in the Islamic world. However, she brings up a concern that Islamic feminism is actually an unnecessary term, since feminism is a social practice, not merely of personal identity, to quote her own words. Fatima Sadat believes combining the terms Islam and feminism actually creates more problems and opens up a lot more doors for Islamists to interpret the Quran to fit their political agendas. One of the major areas of scholarship and activism for Islamic feminists is the Muslim personal law, also known as the Muslim family law, and it uses the acronym MPL for short, so I'll be using that acronym throughout the rest of this video. MPL includes three main areas of law, and those are marriage, divorce, and testation, which is the power and ability to own property, which includes the power to determine who will receive your property upon your passing away. Now, there are several Muslim countries that have really promoted some form of MPL, and those countries are Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Libya, Pakistan, Sudan, Senegal, Egypt, Tunisia, Indonesia, as well as Bangladesh. Now, some nations of Muslim minorities that have promoted some form of MPL or are considering passing laws that promote some sort of aspect of MPL include India and South Africa. In many of these countries, Islamic feminisms have objected to MPL legislation and law on the grounds that that type of law and legislation really discriminates against women. Many Islamic feminists believe that reformed MPL based on the Quran and the Sunnah, which includes a lot of input from Muslim women and which does not discriminate against women, is actually possible. And they have been working on developing forms of MPL that really promote and acknowledge the rights of women. However, on the other hand, there are Islamic feminists that say MPL should be rejected completely rather than just changed and updated. Islamic feminists fight against the way in which MPL regulates polygyny, divorce, custody of children, and marital property, as well as the real underlying assumption in the laws that really assume that the man is the head of the household. They're really trying to flip that upside down, where it's no, a man or a woman could be the head of a household. Leave your thoughts and comments down below. your opinion and your voice really matters. And it's been awesome once again just learning with you, and I look forward to reading your comments and having conversations with you because, you know, I learn a lot from you guys as well. Okay guys, I'm out of here and I can't wait to see you in the next episode.